Hello, everybody. Welcome to Ezekiel Radio, and I am calling it Ezekiel Radio today because Breezy Rich from the Breezy Rich Experience has been gracious enough to allow me to take her spot today since she is off playing somewhere. She's out of town. She's having a great time. She's not worrying about life. She's living the carefree lifestyle, as we all know Breezy Rich does. So for today, this is going to be Ezekiel Radio. However, we are also streaming on Breezy Rich's Experience. So thank you again, Breezy Rich. I appreciate the opportunity. I have with me today a very wonderful guest, and we're going to be talking about some pretty exciting and some fun things for 2 hours. Hopefully you guys can stick with us for the full 2 hours, and we're going to be talking about everything from comedy to tax to the Ezekiel method in the center, and it's just going to be a very packed show, so you want to stay tuned and don't miss a thing. So my guest today is Robert Gralla.
That's right.
Yes, I got the name right. Fabulous. Okay, so Robert, tell me a little bit about yourself. You know, I would love to hear, first of all, did you become a CPA first, or did you become a comedian?
That's a good question. Well, I was a little kid, and I used to crack jokes in class all the time. It gets down to the principal. So I guess I was a comedian first at that point. However, I did become a CPA professionally. I'm an accountant, and I work with taxes. I also do forensic accounting and fraud examination as well.
So that sounds interesting. So for the folks out there, including myself, that don't really know what forensic accounting is, I can just kind of imagine in my mind what that might be in terms of trying to dig and probe, and I would imagine that you go in much deeper than a regular CPA and trying to figure out, okay, where are the...
It's a CPA on a mission.
CPA on a mission.
And a mission to find out what happened, who did it, how they did it, why they did it, and how much, if they took money, how much they actually took, how much inventory they took, and things such as that. It's sort of like being a financial detective. You go in after the fact and you solve a crime, you solve an issue. For example, you might have a client that is very short on inventory, don't know why the inventory is short. So we look into it, we investigate it, we go through their books and their records, and sometimes we do a little bit of surveillance or private investigation work. And at that point, we can sort of delve into it and figure out exactly what's going wrong. And most of the time, we can find the answer to it through forensic accounting. It encompasses a lot, and no two cases are alike. There's no cookie-cutter case, but it's accounting thinking outside of the box with the idea of solving an issue or even solving a crime as well. The best way to describe forensic accounting is this. There was a case 25, 30 years ago, maybe more. I think it was in Philadelphia. And I tell people this, and it's a great way to explain it. There was a woman called the Mayflower Madam. Okay?
Yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
And I, since it was, what you say, 20, 30 years ago, I don't imagine she was actually on the Mayflower, since that was actually after her time. So anyway, yes.
But she had roots.
Unless she was like really, really old, and then it's like, maybe she's a dusty Mayflower madam. I don't know. Anyway.
Oh, she wasn't dusty at all. She was very vibrant.
Very vibrant. Good.
She said she had roots back to the Mayflower. And she was a madam because she, quote unquote, ran an escort service. Okay, and she was arrested, and the IRS wanted to indict her for tax evasion because she never reported any money that she made. And by the way, do you know how they got Al Capone? Tax evasion.
Right.
That's how they arrested him.
Right.
Not bootlegging, not murder, not conspiracy, tax evasion. So what they did was they figured out what the average cost of an escort was in those days, and they figured out whatever the cost was. So they had the selling price. They needed to know what the volume of sales were, and this is where the forensic accounting comes into play. And I hope this is okay for daytime radio. What they did
well,
was...
that depends. I mean, how deep are we going in this? I mean, we're already crossing the madam boundary.
just a touch more,
okay. We may have some, underage people. Just keep, okay. Yeah.
Well, you figure, they had everybody that she serviced was considered an escort, and usually Here's the worst thing I'm going to say, I promise. The worst thing I'm going to say is...
Should I hit the sensing button here? Where's the button? By the way, thank you everybody so far that's been joining us. If you have questions, please post them, and we'll be getting to them shortly. And I'll be asking, hopefully soon, if I can figure out how we can get people to call in. We can actually have live callers call in and ask questions. Oh, guess what? I just found the phone number. So terrific. So the phone number to call in just a little bit, I'll tell people when you go ahead and call in, is 214-431-5062. That's 214-431-5062. Okay, so anyway, as you were saying, what is the juicy details behind the Mayflower Madam that we need to all know about here?
She was running an illegal escort service.
Right.
And they arrested her, and they wanted to find out how much money she made because she never reported any money to the IRS for taxes. And they wanted to get her for tax evasion. So they figured out what the average cost of an escort was. Then what they did was they subpoenaed all of the laundries in the area because they figured, and it's the worst part, every laundry every escort was a set of linen. So once they got to figure out how many sets of linen was cleaned by the laundry that did business with her, they figured out what the amount of volume that she was doing.
No pun intended.
No pun intended.
Any blue dresses show up at the cleaners?
I hope not. I hope not. So they figured out what the cost was, plus the volume, because they were able to subpoena the laundries, which was sort of thinking outside the box. They went outside of her accounting records, which she really didn't have any, and they were able to solve how much business that she did, and she was indicted for tax evasion at that point. So that's sort of thinking outside the box. Forensic accounting is thinking outside the box, using resources besides looking at the person's checkbook or looking at the person's balance sheet or income statement, looking outside that and figuring out what occurred, what happened. And forensics is the science of, best way to explain it, the science of reconstructing a past event, whether it's forensic accounting, forensic medicine, forensic anything. It's reconstructing the event. So we're doing accounting work, and we're doing it after the events occurred. That's basic forensic accounting.
So what is the most bizarre case that you've ever come across? what is the one thing that you're like, oh my God, I can't believe they are either actually doing this or actually getting away with it or both?
Okay. Well, I have an inventory of a few different cases, but I'll be specific on one case. Well, actually not specific.
And how did you incorporate your comedy in that?
Well, there wasn't comedy on that one. It was just the opposite. It was difficult. When I was friends with a couple of private investigators, and an attorney was working with one of the investigators, and he asked if I can come in to do some forensic accounting work. And I walked into the attorney's office. The investigator is there. The attorney's assistant is there. I introduced myself. He introduced himself. One of the first things he said to me, he said, "You're not afraid of people that are hired to beat up other people, are you?"
Oh,
I said,
was that a threat or a promise?
It was a threat. It could have been a promise, but the other parties backed down. So what happened was a gentleman, a rancher, a very rich man, very wealthy man, he died, left everything to his sister. The sister died, and when the heirs to her estate went to see how much the estate was worth, there was nothing left. It was zero.
Oh.
Zero. So we're talking about a $30-40 million estate that just disappeared into thin air.
Okay.
So they asked me if I can look into all of the accounting records for the businesses that this rancher owned and everything that went into the trust that the sister owned and all of that. And I found out exactly what happened. They had somebody working at the ranch, a ranch hand, and his wife started working at the office. And criminals aren't smart. They always make mistakes. They always leave a trail of something. And once you get yourself on that paper trail, you can find out what happened. So she started forging documents, and she's forged the rancher's name. And in fact, it was interesting because, and I have to be very careful how I say this, I was going through a list of commissions that were paid out for one particular year, and I said one person's name and an amount was about $10,000 or $15,000. And he said, "Wait a second, what's that name again?" And I told him the name, and he goes, "It can't be." I go, "It was right here," and here's a canceled check. That was the name of one of the bankers who notarized the rancher's signature. So what happened was he wasn't signing it, someone else was signing it, and he was given money to make believe that the rancher was signing it when it was somebody else.
Okay.
So there were some legal documents that were forged, and there were other legal documents that they just put names on there that didn't belong in the name of the person who was getting all the money, the ranch hand's wife's name. So she ended up being in charge of most of the assets of the estate over a period of about 3 or 4 or 5 years. So over that period of time, everything was being transferred slowly into her name. And she wasn't very smart because she left a paper trail for everything.
Okay, so in kind of analyzing the psychology of somebody that does this, now obviously she wanted to make sure that she had plenty of money, so she was set for life. So
Right.
you've got a combination of things. You've got the need for security, and then you've got the greed factor.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
So are you noticing any other psychological attributes with these individuals? That is there a commonality in
Yes.
people that
Oh, yes.
that do this type of thing?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. There are career criminals that
Mhm.
will commit a crime because that's what they do. That's their way of making a living, unfortunately.
Mhm.
But there's the average everyday person that wakes up in the morning and he doesn't decide that day, or she doesn't decide that day, I'm going to commit a crime. There's 3 factors, and they call this the fraud triangle. Fraud. Fraud triangle.
For those of you who are taking notes out there, don't do this
I
at
believe
home.
it was a Dr. Kessy, Kessy. I believe that was the person who hypothesized this.
Okay.
And there's an organization called the Association for Certified Fraud Examiners, and he was one of the people that started the organization.
Okay.
It's a very interesting discipline, the fraud examination. So I said there's 3 factors, and I'll be brief. One of the factors is the need for the money, the motivation.
Mhm.
In other words, let's say somebody has large medical bills that they can't afford to pay.
They get a lot of debt.
A lot of debt.
Right.
For whatever reason, they have huge debt, and they really can't disclose the reason for the debt. It's kind of private.
Mhm.
That's the first factor. So they have a motivation to have that money. The second factor is the ability to get their hands on the money. I'm the controller of a company, or I'm the bookkeeper, or I'm the inventory clerk, and I can sell inventory without anybody knowing it. So I'm able to get my hands on the money. Somehow, some way, I could write a check to myself, write a check to a fake company. The money is available for me to use in some way, shape, or form. So you have the motivation is step 1. Number 2, you have the ability to get your hands on the money. The third factor is when people can justify what they do. Well, I've been
Okay.
working for this company so many years.
But
They-
this was
they
a
always
wife,
have-
so I mean, she probably felt entitled because it was her husband's company.
Oh, no. What happened was a gentleman owned the ranch.
Oh, he owned the okay.
He owned the ranch, and he hired a ranch hand. It was the ranch hand's
The ranch hand wife. Got you.
An
Okay, so
independent third party.
okay,
Yeah.
now I'm caught up. Okay.
Okay.
So back to the triad.
So we have the motivation. They want the money. They need the money, or even the fact that I want to keep up with the Joneses.
Mhm.
I want to have a lot of money. I want to be wealthy. I have to have some factor why they want that money that badly. They have their ability to get their hands on the money. Third factor is what they call the justification. I worked for this company so many years, they owe it to me.
Mhm.
Or things are really tough right now. When things get better, I'll pay it back. So they can literally justify it in their own mind why they're doing it.
Which probably almost never happens.
Well, no.
It's like Dumb or Dumber with the suitcase full of IOUs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you put those 3 factors together, and it's mostly the motivation which pushes somebody over the edge, and everything else just comes into play. People will commit a fraud. They will steal money. They will take money. They will take inventory. Whatever it takes to get them to where they need to be.
So how soon before they figure out, typically on average, that they're in over their head? Because I imagine that along the way, even though they've got this facade going on, that everything on the outside's fine and they're innocent and nothing's happened, they're probably inside crumbling like a house of cards.
Yes. Well, it depends. There's no really set time. It's more when the house of cards are going to fall. Let's say, for example, you can finagle things around, as I say, borrow from Peter to pay Paul, or borrow from people, or just manage to get to the point where everything would be okay, that they're not going to foreclose your house, you're not going to get put out on the street, your children aren't going to be thrown out of school. If you can manage, just keep the bill collector just one step away or one step ahead of the bill collector, that's fine. It's when everything is about to crash and there is no other way out. That's when it's going to happen.
Now, I imagine also another big clue is when their lifestyle starts to really start to change dramatically, or they
Yes.
start purchasing things that are out of character, or they
Exactly.
start going on trips, or the things start happening in the world that are completely atypical for what has happened in the past, especially with their current level, or what should be their current level of income prior to the fraud.
You're really good. Are you sure you've never done this before? You have all the right questions and all the right answers. That's exactly right. For example, you have a clerk buying a brand new Cadillac, and of course, maybe the spouse has money, maybe they inherited money.
Mm-hmm.
But on average, if somebody's lifestyle changes, yes, that's a clue that something is going on. Their lifestyle can change. They could be buying things that they can't really afford or justify, vacations.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other things is a lot of times somebody will not take a vacation
Mm-hmm.
because they don't want somebody to come in their absence to have any idea what they were doing, have a possibility to look in to see what they were doing. So they may never take a vacation.
Now, is that really so much an indication of fraud? Because, I mean, in a lot of cases, if someone's just a really hard worker, unless they have a pattern of taking vacations, and all of a sudden they go, okay, I'm not moving from this spot. I'm keeping my thumb on everything. But I know for myself, it's very difficult for me to find time away from the office. Just because I've got my nose to the grind, I'm about to be a published author. I've got to practice. I'm running the Ezekiel
Right.
Center. I'm teaching classes. It's like yada yada on and on and on. So to get away, now podcast. So to get away is a bit of a
I
challenge.
think we need to look a little further into you. Well, it's not one factor. It's a combination of factors.
Mm-hmm.
So because somebody does not want to take a vacation doesn't necessarily mean they're committing a fraud. It's just one factor among many. So when you start to put the factors together and you look at them, you take a step back and you look at it, you go, oh, all of these things now are starting to make sense.
See, it's like the branches of a tree or a plant. See, in our course, when we teach about the initiating events, we teach about the concept of mental weeds and emotional seeds. And the emotional seeds are the components that drive the reality that is your life. So everything that's in your life is a result of an emotion that is driving your story. So we're able to actually take a step back and look at the different things in people's lives and see the chain of events that have taken place as a result of actions that they have taken because of the emotions that they've been harboring for months, years, or even a lifetime.
Yes, exactly. And those emotions, and as I said in the beginning, one of the things that they can't disclose is the need for that money. Perhaps it's a gambling debt. Perhaps it could be something like that. They can't actually
Could be
disclose
drugs.
it. It could be drugs. They can't really
Yeah.
disclose it, but they're emotionally involved in it. And,
Right,
and
right.
it's all pent up, and it's driving them because they need to do this without anybody knowing what's going on because they can't disclose it.
Okay, so now be honest with me.
Uh-oh.
It's just you.
I think I left my car running
It-
outside.
It's just you and me, and I think between 20 to 50,000 listeners on Breezy's radio show. So, okay, just between friends. It's not going outside of this whole network of people here,
Okay.
and the folks on my Facebook. Hi everybody. So, you're a comedian. You've done the improv.
Mhm, mhm.
You've got to be cracking jokes inside your. I mean, come on. Some of this stuff has got to be great material. Do you ever use any of this stuff on stage in one form or another? Obviously, you can't reveal names. You can't reveal circumstances. Maybe you change the names to protect the identity of those. But I would imagine that some of this has to be great material to be able to talk about on stage.
Yeah, yes, it is. But you know what's interesting? It definitely is. But it has to be done in a way that the public can understand. If I mention to you that the balance sheet didn't balance because the debits had an item on there that was too high, you would go, "What is he talking about?" But you speak to an accountant, another CPA, another bookkeeper, they totally understand. And in that realm, you can make jokes because they understand the technical aspect of it. But yes, there's a lot of great material out there on what I do when people come in to have their taxes prepared, business, personal taxes, and some of the situations that they go through. There's a lot of very good material. In fact, I have a client that said, you ought to be a stand-up comic. And I said, well, I'm trying.
Well,
And
how long have you been doing that for?
Well, I've never actually publicly done stand-up
Oh, I
comedy.
thought you went to the improv.
Okay. Well, I've gone to the improv. I've done improvisational comedy.
Improvisational.
Yes.
Okay, I thought you were at the improv comedy. I was going to be like, oh wow, we got a forensic CPA and a celebrity in our midst.
Well, I'm sorry to disappoint
No,
you.
it's not a disappointment. This has been great so far. I think everybody is enjoying it so far. At least that's the feedback I'm starting to see.
I've
so
studied
beautiful.
stand-up. I haven't gotten my act ready for that.
You haven't gotten your act together?
I'm running my material. I'm telling you, you got the forensic work down. You got the improv. You got the comedy thing down. I'm going to switch seats in a minute here. This is great. My client said to me, he goes, all you have to do is this: go up on stage, tell them that you're a CPA, and ask if anybody has any tax questions, and take it from there. And I've done this before with audiences, with friends, and people have tax questions, and we had a blast. They've gotten answers, but we did it in a very, very funny way. In fact, I do a lot of business networking. Okay. And that's how I've developed my practice. You go to a group of people, it could be 10, 20, 30, 50 people, and everyone is there to promote their business.
Sure.
So everybody also gets what they call a 30-second commercial, an elevator speech. My name is Robert Gralla. I'm a CPA. I help people file taxes. I'm looking for people that need taxes to be done. They say,
the usual elevator pitch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been to those many a times, and I get up there, and I'm just, it's like, okay. I've done those networking groups for 100 years, it feels like. But
I use that time to perfect my comedy.
Okay.
I get up there, once in a while I'm serious. A lot of times when I get up there, it's a great audience. Free mic time.
I'll be here all week?
Yeah. I get up there and I tell jokes. I tell funny things. I went to the McKinney, Texas. I'm a member of the Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
And the first time I went there, first few times I went to their Wednesday morning networking meeting. A lot of people, about 100 people. I go, I'm a CPA. I need to, before anybody really gets to know me, I need to be very conservative, very straight-laced and all that. And I did 1 or 2 elevator speeches that were very, very conservative. So I said, okay, people know me now. I'm going to have some fun. So the third time I came out of the blue, I brought my harmonica in.
Your harmonica?
And I played a harmonica song, and I sung them a song, Robert Gralla, CPA, do-do-do-do. I'll do your taxes, A-OK, do-do-do-do. And I went on to do a few more things. I got a standing ovation.
Really?
Yes.
Awesome. So you need to take that on the road.
Yeah.
So you need to do like an open mic night at the comedy club.
I'm getting ready to do some open mic clubs, open mic nights.
See, I would venture to guess that you could, with some of the stories that you have, some in your arsenal, in changing some of the names, I'm pretty confident you've got some pretty funny stories that you could share with people that people could relate to and that people could really get on board with and laugh and have a good time. Now, unfortunately, some of the stories might be at somebody else's expense, but since you're changing the names, then
it's comedy.
It's
So
comedy.
we
It's
could do
comedy.
that. We could do that.
Comedy, if I'm not mistaken, is something that you really want to be relatable to not only yourself, but it has to translate across to your audience so that they have that instant connection with, that they can see whatever situation you're making a joke about being a possibility in their world.
Exactly. You start off a joke. I was driving my car down the road. Everybody relates to driving their car down the road. I was in a restaurant with my family. I was in the supermarket buying groceries, and the clerk came up to me and asked me why I had 35 gallons of water in the shopping cart. And you just go from there. You relate to the audience. You're exactly right. You come up with something that relates to the audience, relates to something every day. I have this I just want to call it shtick. I wrote some comedy, and it has to do with people from history and how they got to be famous. And then I was performing this in front of my mirror to see what it was like, and I said to myself, it was about Benjamin Franklin, it was about Albert Einstein, and I said, people can't relate to that. So I just took that material and I put it down. I don't have any current material, because right now I am buried under with work, because we have a September 15th, then an October 15th deadline. I'm not prepared to go into any of the material that I'm sort of working on at the moment. But you're absolutely right, it has to be contemporary, and people have to be able to relate to it. And the other part is this. When you want to make someone laugh, you have to bring their thinking to a certain way. You drive them down the road, and then at the last moment, you give them a curve, and you take them to a different direction. It's like I said to someone the other day. I hope this is okay for your audience.
I guess we're about to find out.
I went to a networking meeting, and before I even say who I am, I make people laugh. I said, this morning I got up and I rolled a joint. My ankle is much better now after I put ice on it.
Ah, there you go.
Okay.
Ba-dum-bum. I love it, yeah.
So you lead them down one thing because they're thinking, oh, he's doing this when he woke up. He rolled
So you
joint.
do a little mental diversion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's that
A little
curveball.
mental bait and switch.
Yeah. And it's that curveball that is the laugh. That's where you get the laugh.
Yeah.
And it's very clever and it's very intellectual. What I like about comedy is if you watch some of the old comedians, they were very clever in the way they would tell a story with those little twists, those little punchlines.
Sure, sure.
And the more clever it is, the funnier it is. And not only is it funny, but it's very clever. You admire the cleverness, the intelligence that goes behind it, the intelligence. And also, of course, it's funny as well.
And you've got to be careful it doesn't go over people's heads.
That's true too. That's true too. But there are things you can say when it goes over people's heads to sort of bring it back down.
Kind of rein it in.
Kind of rein it in.
Have you ever been heckled? And if you have, how do you handle the hecklers?
Well, you have a series of things you say to hecklers. And they're prearranged that you know what you're going to say if someone says something to you if they're heckling you. You have 5 or 6 lines you can say, or you just find something funny about them. Like that's a great shirt you're wearing. It didn't look as good when I threw it out. I don't mean you, but you say things. You just come back at them, and sometimes you get a heckle in the audience. That's very good, and you go toe to toe, and that's a comedy show in itself.
It can be. Now, is there a fine line that you have to be careful of where you are bantering back and forth to the point where maybe you need a security escort on the way out to your car?
A referee.
Yeah.
Well, usually there'll be a security guard or somebody would come up and say something, but it never gets to the point that you get hot under the collar or it gets heated. You always keep it at a level where it's fun.
You can always tell them that you're a forensic CPA and they better watch out.
You better believe it.
That'll stop it right there.
I'm going to find out who they are and send the IRS after them. That's what we're going to do. That's what we do. But it never gets to that level, because usually what happens is someone that's been on stage, someone that's a professional, has enough information and enough tools in their arsenal to just quiet that person down, and they sort of just put their head down and just leave. Or they just sit down, or their wife or their girlfriend says, "Joe, that's enough. That's enough. You made a fool out of yourself. We're not going to tell the children about this." They just calm down, because they're up against the pros.
Well, theoretically, depending how much they've had to drink, they won't even remember it the next day anyway.
Yeah, that's true too.
Yeah.
And the other thing I like to do what's called improv comedy. Improv is very interesting. It's made up right on the spot. There will never be the same 2 shows ever again. And it's made up on the spot. And there's different types of improv. There's long form and there's short form. The long form is basically someone in the audience gives a suggestion to a comedy troupe. A comedy troupe could be 2 people, 5 people, 6 people, 4 people. Doesn't matter, whatever size it is. They give a suggestion, anything. It could be automobile. It could be a dog, cocker spaniel. And they do a whole skit based around that, just making it up at the same time. It's incredible what they do. And the whole key to improv is whatever your partner says, you agree to, and you move, and you add to it, and you move forward. So if someone said the sky is green outside, yes, the sky is green outside, but it looks like it's going to rain. You just add to it, and it looks like it's pre-made. It looks like there's a script, but there's not a script. By agreeing to the person and carrying it forward, then they agree to what you said, and they carry forward. It looks like a pre-made script.
So it's a fun way to establish an advanced level of rapport.
Yeah, you might say that.
Yeah.
There's a TV show. Whose line is it anyway?
I was just thinking of that as you were mentioning.
That's
kind of the general idea.
Improv at its finest. It looks like it's made up beforehand. It looks like it's pre-scripted, but it's not. They make it up on the spot. And that's the beauty of it, because when you're on stage performing improv, you have no idea where the thing is going to go.
Right.
You start in one place and you end up somewhere else, and you go like, "Oh my gosh, how did we get there?" And it's just so much fun. It's adult playtime, as we call it. Adult playtime.
Well, that's fabulous. So, where do you hope to take your comedy one day? What do you have any
Vegas, baby.
Vegas, baby.
Vegas,
Okay,
baby.
okay. So, do you have any long-term aspirations in terms? Are you actively trying to advance your career? Are you trying to, or are you pretty well set in the forensic world, and you're just like, okay, this is what I love to do. This is my passion. This is what drives me. Or is it just the comedy more of fun and just kind of dabbling?
Well, first thing, besides forensics and fraud examination, I also do tax and accounting work as well.
Okay.
I have a large tax practice, individuals, businesses, corporations, partnerships. This is a good plug, isn't it? But you see, what's hampering me in my development of my comedy, my stand-up, and my improv is one very simple thing that I'm trying to overcome.
Okay,
and
what's
that's
that?
paying my bills. Okay, and that's where my accounting practice has to come into place. Other than that, I would be doing a lot more work in comedy, and my goal is not so much to do the improv, but to do more stand-up comedy. I would love to perform stand-up comedy on a professional basis, in front of live audiences. And that is my ultimate goal. For my clients that are listening, I promise I'll still take care of your accounting work, okay? And I'll give you free tickets for my shows.
So you're not going to be like Dr. Ken and leave his medical practice, right, and go, see ya.
Yeah. There was a TV show many years ago. I can't think of his name. The name just slips me. I'll think of it.
Okay.
And he was actually a CPA. And he became an actor, and he had a TV show. I can't think of his name. I've seen him so many times. It was about northeast in New England. He had a bed and breakfast. I can't think of his name. But yeah, he was a CPA, and he left the practice and became an actor, and he made it famous. Although I'm sure there are a lot of other CPAs that left the practice that try to do acting that, well, they're doing CPA work again. Not everybody becomes famous. But
See,
I would like to do that. I would like to do stand-up comedy in front of live audiences. That's my goal.
that it's really kind of an interesting dichotomy, if you will, because you've got most people think of CPAs as being very methodical, very dry, if you will, very cerebral in their methodology, and they don't really think of CPAs in general as having much of a sense of humor. And if they do have a sense of humor, typically it's going to be the type of sense of humor that's going to appeal to other CPAs. So what I'm fascinated with is the fact that you've got this duality about you, that you're CPA on one hand, which is very serious work, and then you're going into the forensic aspects as well, not also, as you mentioned, doing other people just regular straight accounting. But then you've got this other side of you that's almost completely polar opposite. Can you tell us a little bit about how you kind of bridged that gap between the two? Which led first? Which is the chicken or the egg? Did you decide you were going to be funny first, or did you decide you're going to get into numbers, or they just kind of happened together? What was the impetus of this?
It's an interesting story, and I'll tell you that. It's every day when I wake up, I have this yin yang, the opposite direction. Some days I wake up, I go, am I a comedian or am I an accountant today? Depending on the day of the week. And sometimes when I get too far, when I do a lot of work during tax season, my analytical brain comes in, and it's hard to do the comedy. One is very analytical, one is very creative. I've always been a very creative person my whole life, since I was a child. So what happened was this. I'm registering at Queens College, City University of New York.
Okay.
First semester to register. And this is around the time of computers. We're in this huge room. And this is the end of August of 19 something or other. The air conditioning dies. And this room is crowded with people, hundreds of people in this room trying to register for class.
Okay.
The temperature is very high. It's very humid in there. It's so horrible in that room. One girl was online. She fainted. That's how bad it was. Yeah. I'm looking around the room going, what is the solution to this? There's got to be a way to make this quicker. So what do I look for? The shortest registration line. So I get on the shortest registration line. And when I get up to the front, they ask, what is this? What am I registering for? They said, you just became an accounting major.
Well, that's one way to do it.
I said, I've always been interested in business, besides, being funny and getting kicked out of school and sent to the principal. I've always had an interest in business. Right. And I said, okay, that's great. Accounting is a great discipline to learn. And honestly, regardless of what you do, if you were to say that you were to take a few accounting classes, I would highly recommend it. It's just good general knowledge in today's world to know how to handle money, a little bit of background about money, about finances, about how the business world works. Everybody should have a little bit of background about that. So I've always had an interest in business, and I said, accounting, I said, okay, I'm good, I'll do it.
Okay, so before you go to college and you're signing up for these classes, and before you pick the shortest line available, what were your ambitions at that point in time? What did you graduate high school? You go to your college campus. What did you think you were going to do?
Actually, I've always had it in my mind. I wanted to do something in one of the professions. Okay? I liked a lot of different things, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something in a white-collar profession. As crazy as that sounds, perhaps medicine, legal, accounting, and also, I come from a Jewish background, okay? And if you say anything less to your parents, you want to do anything less than being a professional, it's like they're going to disown you.
Well, absolutely, because, around my household, the question never was, are you going to college? It's which one are you going to, and what are you going to be?
Exactly.
So it was never a around my family. It was all the expectation that you continue on after high school, and you're going to be a professional. Period. End of story. There's no discussion. That's just the way it is. Yes. Now, are you going to be, like you said, an accountant? Are you going to be a doctor? Are you going to be a lawyer? Which of the primary professions are you going to be, and that is typically kind of stereotypical with our
I mean, there's nothing wrong with any other work that's out there, any other jobs. There's nothing wrong with that, except it's sort of part of the culture. Right. I say, in a Jewish tradition, a fetus isn't recognized as a live person until they graduate from medical school.
Or one of the blue collar, or white collar professions. Yeah, absolutely, exactly.
Or one of the professions. So I did want to go into college, and I wanted to do.
Or engineering. I mean,
engineering.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's a small little joke. It goes, after everything I've done for you, what's a small little Nobel Prize mean? You got to get one for me. After everything I've done for you, I just messed up the joke, but that's you get the flavor of it. So I wanted to do something in one of the professions, and I've always had an interest in business. When I was a kid, I had the paper route, the lawn mowing. I worked as a delivery boy for different stores, Chinese food, cleaning, a butcher store. I worked as a delivery boy. I was always out there hustling to make $1 or $2. So business was always something on the forefront. So when it came time for this accounting, I said, this is great. I like this. This is where I'm going to go. And it was always influenced on me. My parents always said, go to college, do something with yourself, make something out of yourself and all that. Mom, I want to become a painter. So if you don't become a painter, we can hire a painter. We don't need to become a painter.
That's a hobby. That's not a career.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. But
do that on your free time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I went on to college, and I graduated from college, and I went on, and I liked accounting and tax. And I went on, I got a master's degree in business administration as well. So combination of all that, it set me out for the job front, and as soon as I graduated, I started working, from accounting for different accounting firms. This was back in New York.
Gotcha.
And one of the first accounting firms I worked for, they did a lot of work in the New York City Garment Center, which is a very interesting place. You learn a lot about accounting in the Garment Center because so much goes on. And as they call it the schmata trade. Schmata is a Yiddish word for a rag. And I think the best definition of what a schmata is this is what your ex-husband's new wife wears.
See, that whole profession, that whole trade is cut from a different cloth, I'll tell you what, huh?
Yeah.
So we're going to be going to commercial here in just a few minutes. We're not there yet, but our phone number here is 214-431-5062. If you want to call in, if you have any questions for our guest, or if you would like to type question in on Facebook Live, please do so. And if for whatever reason we start running low on time and can't get to the question before we take a break, then we will take it after the break. We will be continuing on here in the next hour, so we still have another hour here with our guests. So in getting into the forensic accounting, so you start off with, you got in the shortest line. Then why did you decide to go into forensic accounting?
I was fascinated with it. When I came down to Dallas from New York.
Now, did you decide to do it in New York, or were you here when you did it?
In Dallas is when
when I
decided to do it more and go into it. I got a job as soon as I came down here, and I worked for a single member CPA firm that did a lot of tax work for him. I ran his tax department, and he also did, you call it litigation support, working with attorneys in developing cases for court. In other words, one party sues another party. And they need to get numbers, they need to get evidence of what one party did to another, how they harmed them in business. And I worked on 2 or 3 cases with this other CPA. And we wouldn't call it forensic accounting. It sort of was forensic accounting. We call it then litigation support because you were helping the litigators, the attorneys. And I just thought this was fascinating, absolutely fascinating. We worked on a case that one party was suing another party for about $5 million.
Wow.
After we did our forensic work, we got it down to about $80,000.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And I was just fascinated. And we'd sit there. I would sit with this man, and we would figure out the strategy, what to do, how to delve into things, and what to look for, where to find it. One time, I did 5 cities in like 4 days. I flew into Little Rock. From there, I flew into Nashville. From there, I flew into Atlanta. I was just all over the place because this company had offices in many different cities. And I had to go in, I had to get their books and their records and look into things to see what was going on. We come up with these schedules. But it was because of working with him that opened up my whole world to me, going, wow, this is pretty cool.
So I got a question for you that inquiring minds want to know.
Okay.
As you mentioned, you just saved someone boatloads of money. I mean, well over $4 million. Okay, and they only had to pay out $80,000, right? Okay, so when you save somebody that kind of money, and they're probably over the moon, ecstatic and happy, and they're jumping for joy, are they still doing that after they get the bill? What's the trade-off? So they just saved 4+ million, almost 5 million, right?
Mm-hmm. There's ethics. Believe it or not, there are ethics in the trade. There are ethics.
I believe it.
Okay.
I believe that they're ethics. I'm not questioning the ethics. What I'm wondering is okay. So if someone's saving over 4 million, then what kind of a
bill do you give them?
Yeah.
It's very simple. Okay, and it's very basic. Okay, we don't get a percentage of a case. We're not allowed to.
Okay.
Especially, for example, when I do a tax return, I'm not allowed, it's against the law for me to promise somebody a refund, nonetheless to say, we'll base my fee on a percentage of your refund. I'm not allowed to do that. It's based on time. You have a billable amount that you put in per hour. In other words, like an attorney will go, it's $250 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and he puts in X amount of hours for a case, that's what he bases his bill on. So even if I save a client $5 million, if I save them $5,
Mm-hmm.
if I save them $50,000,
The bill's going to be the bill.
it's going to be the bill. It's
Yeah.
going to be how many hours of time and expense, reimbursed for expenses that we put into a case.
Right.
Obviously, sometimes cases with a higher value takes more time,
Mm-hmm.
so the bill will be higher. But because we saved them $5 million, we can't give them a bill based on 10% or just come up with some number. It's based on the amount of man hours that were put into the job.
Great to know. Valuable information. So before we go into the commercial break here before too long, how can people get a hold of you if they have an interest?
Okay, quite a few ways they can get a hold of me. My phone number, may I give it out?
Please.
Okay, my phone number is 214-244-2535. My website is www.robertgralla, ROBERTGRALLA.com. You can find me on Facebook. You can call me. You can can't text me. You can call me. You can look me up on my Facebook page. You can go through my website. And my office is located in Frisco, Texas, and I travel all over the state of Texas. Most of my clients right now are in the North Texas area: Dallas, Frisco, Plano, McKinney, Pilot Point, and elsewhere. I have clients out of state. California clients. I still have some New York clients. Originally, I'm from New York, and some of the clients they just stayed with me. So, best way to call me, best way to get in touch with me is 214-244-2535. Once again, 214-244-2535. And please, if you call me, say hello, because a lot of times I get a lot of robocalls. And if you don't say something within 5 seconds, I'm going to hang up the phone. But if you call 214-244-2535, I'll be more than happy to speak to you and see if I can help you.
Fantastic. Now, we're going to be going to break here very shortly, and then give us just a few minutes, and then reconnect with us here on Facebook Live as well as the Internet Radio. And we're going to be doing a second half, which promises to be as equally as interesting. Now, what we're going to do in the second half is I want to find out a little bit more about what brought you to Texas. You're from New York. Mm-hmm. We're going to save this for the second half. So we're going to get a little build up, kind of see what led you here. But also, I want to talk a little bit about more of the psychology of the people that you help that on both sides of the fence. So there's going to be two sides of the fence that we're going to be talking about. The ones that you know in your heart of hearts that they have just been done wrong, and you're there to help them and hold their hand and be there for them. I want to talk a little bit about the psychology of that, what their mindset might have been, what the emotional state was, and what might have been the things that led them into their current situation.
Okay.
And then we're going to use the method to kind of talk our way a little bit about how they, as individuals, might find their way either out of a situation like that, change the vibrational energy, and then how they can prevent future incidences like that from happening again. Because I imagine that in your world of accounting, you have probably seen some patterns with people that maybe this type of thing keeps reoccurring in their world in one form or another.
Yes. You see, one of the basic principles with tax preparation is compliance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We have to comply to the IRS requirements. In fact, sometimes I feel that I work for the IRS. I don't work for my clients. I work for the IRS.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain things we have to comply with. And clients, sometimes they don't know it because they've never been taught that.
Right.
They never heard about it. So when I get a new client, I look and see what their compliance history is, whether they have all the documents, whether they file on time, whether they make the right amount of estimated payments. So a lot of it is basic compliance to what the IRS requirements are, and we try to get them into into compliance.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the biggest things that I have with clients.
Okay, so the next half,
Okay.
we're going to be delving a little bit deeper because we're going to be talking more about the energetic, spiritual aspect of what you do and how people can shift their consciousness and their energy in order to have things flow more harmoniously in their life.
There's a couple of secrets to that.
And we're going to hold on to that thought, and we're going to come back right after the break. Everybody who has joined us, please stay tuned. We will be back live here very shortly. And thank you, everybody who have joined us so far. Please reach out to your friends, have them join. This feed will also be up live. I plan to keep it on the website, so share with your friends as well. And we will be back within just a few minutes. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Ezekiel Radio. We are pleased to have our guest, Robert Gralla.
You got it again twice. I'm
yes,
impressed.
I'm on a roll. I'm on a roll. Yes. Fabulous. Okay. So the question now becomes, you're from New York. So
can you tell from the accent?
just a wee bit. Just a wee bit. I can pick up on the accent just a wee bit. So tell me a little bit about your history in terms of, okay, what kind of a childhood did you have? Did you like school? I mean,
if you want stories from New York, how many more minutes do we have on the show?
30 seconds. No.
Well, I can tell you stories, many stories. You know what's interesting? Just as a side note,
mm-hmm.
I grew up in New York. I came down here at the end of 1999 for various reasons. And when I go back to New York to visit, I never detected this before. I never heard the New York accent.
Mm-hmm.
But living down here, you hear the southern twang, the Texas accent and everything, people talking southern. When I go back to New York, I hear that New York accent now so prevalent. It's amazing. I hear my family, I talk to them, I'm going, wow, you people from New York, aren't you? And it's funny because I have a New York accent. I've gotten rid of a little bit of it down here. When I go back to New York, within 30 seconds, it's back. The full 100%.
It's back, like you never left.
Yeah, it's like I never left.
Yeah, it's like riding a bike. Accents, riding a bike, you still got it. Okay.
And I wish I had $1 for every time someone here in Texas, since I came down there, said to me, "You ain't from these here parts, my partner, are you?"
I maybe need to work a little on the Texas accent. I think it's close. You just about nailed it, but maybe a little bit closer. Okay, so how old are you, if you don't mind me asking? Actually, you don't even have to answer. Don't even worry about it. Okay,
I'm old enough to know better.
Smart enough not to.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
There you go. Okay. Great. Got it. Okay, so what was growing up in New York like for you?
I went to regular school, public school. I went to the first few years. I went to something called, it was a Jewish parochial school called a yeshiva.
So for those of that out there that don't know what that is, can you explain what that is?
It's basically half the day you learn about the Jewish culture, and you learn Hebrew, reading, writing, and composition, and the other half of the day you do American subjects, math, social studies, English. And I did that for about 4 years, and it just wasn't a right fit for me. I got a great background, great education, a lot of cultural learning, and then from there I went into regular public school, and then I went to junior high school, and then on to college, mostly public education. And it's interesting. I went to the City University of New York when your tuition was very inexpensive, and
they're trying to make it free now. That's talking about inexpensive.
Yeah, it was almost free.
Almost free. Okay.
It was almost free.
So this isn't exactly a new concept then.
No, it's
not.
Okay. Well, you live in New York City and you pay a lot of New York City real estate taxes, so you have to put something towards education.
Sure.
But New York City resident, they were entitled to an education in the City University. I couldn't afford to go to what they call sleepaway college, upstate New York, the State University, party universities, and I would have probably not gone there for long if I was there, because it was just people do that a lot of times, just party all the time. I like to have fun with my friends, but I also wanted to get an education as well.
Sure.
So I went to the City University of New York, Queens College, great education. I put that education to just about any other college in the United States.
Okay.
Great education.
Fair enough.
That I got there. I was born in a little town in Brooklyn, New York. It's called Williamsburg.
Okay.
Williamsburg was a little blue collar area that most of the people, when they immigrated from Europe in the beginning of the century, the 1900s, 20s, 30s, 40s, would come to that area. And there were Jewish people, there were Italian people, And there were Irish people that lived in there. A lot of the immigrants that came in lived in that area.
Okay, so now before you get too far into that, when we
Okay.
were talking prior to the show, you had mentioned that you have an Italian background.
Sort of an Italian.
Sort
It's
of,
a Spanish background.
yes, Spanish. Excuse me,
background,
Spanish. Yes. So tell me a little bit about that, and then we'll get back to your Brooklyn experience.
Okay, interesting story. My last name is Gralla, Gralla, and for all intents and purpose, it sounds Italian. And people don't know that it's not a Jewish name. It doesn't end with a Berg or a Witz or a Stein or something like that, right? Or an Ian, you know.
Or a man. Yeah.
Yeah, man. And when someone asks, what's your background? I say, I have a Jewish background. I go, really? And I have the New York accent, and I sometimes talk with my hands. I can pass off for someone that's Italian. But my family actually goes back. Some of my cousins researched the family tree, and they researched it back to Barcelona, Spain, in the Middle Ages. And around the time of the Inquisition, Queen Isabella, she said to all of the people that were not Catholic that either you have to convert to Catholicism or leave the country. So my family migrated, the Gralla clans in those days, and other clans as well, migrated across Europe. There's also people that migrated from Spain to North Africa, and those are what's known as the Sephardic Jews.
Right.
The Sephardic Jews. The people that migrated to Europe are known as the Ashkenazi Jews. My family migrated to Europe, were Ashkenazi Jews. My family ended up settling in Poland. And my dad and my uncle and my grandparents were born in this tiny little town. I don't remember the name of it. Town doesn't exist anymore. And they didn't have birth records in those days. So my dad, they weren't sure what year he was born. Was it like 1912 or 1913? We're going back a ways. So they weren't sure exactly what year. It was 10 years after the flood. That's the best recollection of it. So my family was...
Noah's flood?
Could be. So my family was back in Poland, and during the early part of the 1900s, 20s and 30s, people were smart. They saw what was going on in Europe, and a lot of people were anti-Semitic in Europe, and my family wanted
Still a lot of that going on today, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Sadly, yeah.
And they saw the rise of the Nazi Party, and people wanted to get out of Europe. So my family ended up migrating from Europe over to the United States. And I didn't mention this when we were speaking before, but I had my dad's older brother, my uncle. He helped bring the family over.
Okay.
What happened was one day the Polish army came to the house. He was like 17 or 18 years old and said, you just got conscripted, and we're going to pick you up tomorrow, and you're in the army.
Conscripted. Okay.
Yes,
Scripted, yes?
Conscripted, in other words.
Conscripted. So for those, including myself, for those who don't know what that means, I
you
assume
got
that's drafted. Okay.
You just were drafted
Okay.
into the army, and were coming to pick you up. The laws then were, in that country, were a little bit different. My uncle did not want to go because they were going to take the Jewish soldiers, put them in the front line. I don't know if it was the Russian war going on with some of the European countries, or it might have been the Russo-Japanese war going on at that time. I'm not 100% sure.
See, I wasn't even aware that there was a Russian-Japanese war. That's interesting.
Around the turn of the century, just right afterwards, yeah, there was.
Okay.
So he wanted to escape because he was going to be killed within a few days if he was in the army. So it took him about a year to get across Europe. And he finally made it into France. And from France, he couldn't get into the U.S. He had no passport. He was an illegal. So he made it into Mexico. And a lot of the Jewish people were migrating from Europe, going into Mexico, from Mexico, going across the Rio Grande into the United States. So, and there were what you would call the Jewish Underground Railroad at the time. People were helping him. They would hide him at night because there were the people looking for him, or strangers in towns. It was a time that they were looking for people that were trying to escape out of Europe.
Right.
Especially, he left town that night in a hay cart drawn by horses to get out of town, and he hid underneath it because there were soldiers looking around for people trying to escape, and everything. It was very bad in those days. So he made it. Gosh, the thunder.
Yeah, so you better be telling the truth of the
That's
story, because
lightning,
we just had flash of lightning and thunder. So God's listening. Okay, go ahead.
So he made it from France into Mexico, and now he had to make it from Mexico into the United States. And fortunately, my grandfather came a few years earlier and was already in Brooklyn. So he attempted 3 times to get across the Rio Grande River. On the 3rd time, he finally made it across the Rio Grande River into the state of Texas. And from there, he was able to get on a train that took him into Chicago, and he was able to get into New York. And the interesting story is, I don't know the truth of this, but this is what my cousins, his children, have told me. In the Jewish Passover, one of the people, the characters, is somebody called Eliyahu.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody opens the door at one point of the Passover meal, and opens the door looking for Eliyahu to come, because he's supposed to be the
Elijah.
Elijah,
Elijah the prophet. Yeah,
Elijah the
yeah,
prophet.
yeah. Uh-huh.
So the story goes is that he finally made it into Brooklyn on the first night of Passover, and when they're opening up the door for Elijah, he walks in.
That's perfect. So what's interesting is that our family kind of has a similar but opposite entry into the country. So my family, well, my grandfather was born in Palestine,
Okay.
which is now Israel,
Yeah, for Israel.
and he was born in a city called Petah Tikva.
Okay.
And from there, he went to France, and then from France, he came into the United States, settled in Chicago, and then eventually found his way to Arkansas and then Texas.
Okay.
There's a whole backstory to that. And my grandmother was also settled in Chicago, met my grandfather in Chicago, and then,
Mhm.
yeah. So yours seemed to kind of went the opposite. They crossed into Texas, and then they went to New York.
Because my grandfather was at that point already in New York, and as I said, in Williamsburg and different parts of Brooklyn, there were the immigrants that came in earlier. And when you come into a foreign country, you want to go with your kind. So
Right.
you're going to settle in the same areas where your kind is
It's
settled.
familiarity.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the culture.
And the culture, everything in the background
Mhm.
is very similar. And what's interesting is that people that did escape from Europe, they were looking for a better way of life.
Mhm.
You talk about motivation. They just wanted a better way of life.
Sure.
And it took my uncle a year to get across Europe, and very difficult to get across the ocean with a ship. Then coming into the United States, making his way all the way to New York. It took him about 2 years altogether to finally get from where he was in Poland to New York City.
Mhm.
And he grew up, he had a retail bakery. My dad and him were partners in his bakery for many years in Brooklyn. And they worked very hard to provide for the next generation, so the next generation didn't have to have the sufferings that they had, and provide very well for the next generation.
Right.
You know, my background is I'm firstborn in the United States, firstborn in the United States on my dad's side of the family. Myself, my brother, my sister. My dad was born in Europe. I'm first generation here. I'm very proud, and I feel very, I have a lot of gratitude. I'm very happy and grateful that I was able to have the background and be born here and have the education and the solid family that I was able to have because of the sufferings that my dad has done and my uncle, coming to this country and working very hard.
So let me ask you a question. So gratitude is one of the cornerstones of what we teach. Gratitude is an emotional state that can take you and rocket you into areas in your life that you never dreamed possible. So when you have that gratitude and you think about what your family went through, how your family suffered, because they did suffer. They were on the run basically, like a lot of families back then. When you think of the life and the lifestyle that you have now, how do you think that gratitude has impacted your life and the life of the people around you?
That's a very good question, and I don't take anything for granted.
Mhm.
Everything I have, I fully appreciate and take nothing for granted because of the fact that I have it. Like, for example, I'm sure driving out here today, I was hit with a lot of rain, a lot of thunder, and the roads were not in the best of condition.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there were a lot of people cursing at the weather, this bad weather, figures I have to drive in this bad weather, it's raining, why can't I was like, okay, it's raining, I'm good. I have great tires on my car. I'm happy that I have great tires on my car. I'm happy for that. I'm happy for this weather. It's all good. It's fine. It's okay. As opposed to, I could be out there walking in this weather. Okay?
Right.
I may not even have a raincoat to walk in this weather or an umbrella. So you have to take it each step at a time with what you have and be very grateful for what you have, because you'd be surprised the gifts that you have that other people don't have.
Mhm.
And what you have is very, very special. At the evening, I come home, I have a place to live. I have food on the table. How many
Mhm.
people out there don't have that? Is it the fanciest place? A lot more fancier places than that. But I'm very grateful and very happy that I have a place, and this is my station right now, where I live, and I'm happy for that. I'm happy that I have a job. Happy that I have my background, my education. There's a few clients throughout the year that I do. I charge very little. They can't afford it, but they have to have their tax returns prepared. And I feel that I need to give back a little bit. I'm very thankful for the gifts that I have. I'm not a very wealthy person at all. I go out and I have to work for a living, and some days are very tough. I would love to win the lottery with how many millions of dollars and retire, in fantasy and everything. I would love that. But that's not where I'm at.
Right.
I work very hard. But I'm still grateful for what I have. I have my education, I have my background, my experience, my knowledge, I have my health. I give little gifts to other people by helping them with their taxes when they're less fortunate than me. Ladies and gentlemen, please don't come to me. I can't do this for everybody, but there's certain people that I do as part of giving back, for being grateful for what I have.
Right.
As opposed to, instead of me taking 2 hours to do that return for getting very little back, I could do a much bigger tax return, get a lot more money for it. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's true. But I take my time to make sure that person has their tax return.
That's part of being a mensch.
Yeah, a mensch.
Yeah,
A
yeah,
mensch.
yeah. A good person for those out there that don't know what a mensch is. Yeah.
A mensch. Yeah, and that's what it's about. And I believe that's what we need to do. I believe what you put out there, you get back twice fold.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Well, see, it's interesting because it works both ways. You get back the positive emotions, and you also get back the negative ones.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in talking about negative emotions, I don't know if you really know this or not. Most people think that they have an idea of what negative emotions are, but what if I told you there really aren't any negative emotions? Now, there might be lower vibrational states, but all emotions, depending on how you use them, can either be positive or negative. It's all in the context and within the intent and how long any person stays in any particular emotional state that is going to determine whether it's going to be positive or negative, or appropriate or inappropriate.
Okay. How would you, in that realm, how would you define something like prejudice or hatred? As a negative, if it's not a negative emotion, how do you define hatred or anger?
Well, again, what we teach is it's the right tool for the right job. So there's a place for everything, right? So you may think, well, okay, there's no room for hatred in my heart. Well, if you're really honestly saying that, you're lying to yourself, because everybody has it. It's part of the human condition. Mm-hmm. Now it's in how you use it. So now you might, for example, hate the way somebody is behaving. Maybe they're behaving in such a way that you find to be potentially harmful to yourself or others. Well, then it would be beneficial, at least on a temporary short-term basis, to have that hatred so you can get yourself out of a bad situation, or protect yourself or get other people out of a bad situation. It can be a motivating factor, but to stay in a lower vibrational negative state for too long is detrimental not only to you but to others.
I can understand that. They say your brain is like a fertile field.
It is, 100%.
And the thoughts that you plant are what you're going to reap.
Absolutely, 100%. So that's why we're going to get into the psychology of the forensics here in just a little bit. But in terms of prejudice, we live in a society and a culture today that says that you have to embrace and accept everything around us. It's a load of crap. Okay, because we're designed to have prejudices within us, that biases things that we like, things that we don't like, things that we resonate to, and things that we don't. I mean, I might not like blue cheese. Okay, just because it's in our culture that says I should like everything, and blue cheese happens to make me want to throw up.
I can relate to that.
Doesn't mean that I should be forced to have to like something that innately I don't like. Now, let me clarify something. Just because I may or may inherently not like something does not give me the right to act out against something or somebody else. Okay?
Makes sense.
Now, I can have preferences now, and I can choose to either do one of a couple things. I can find out, why do I have prejudice, which we all have, and try to see things from a more open-minded, a broad spectrum perspective, to maybe allow some other things in to enlighten my world to the fact that I would be inviting in the opportunity for expansion. Or if I know where my prejudice come from, and I feel like they're justified, then maybe it's something that I need to keep me safe.
True. Sometimes your gut reaction is your sense of self-preservation.
Right. So if I'm walking down a street, and God forbid it happens to be a dark alley, and I see individuals that are hanging out that don't look like somebody I would want to invite home, it might be prudent to take another route. Or if I have no choice but to go through that alley, then it may be wise for me to be on my guard. Now, if I'm going to be politically correct and say, it's not nice to be prejudiced. It's not nice to have negative judgments or attitudes toward others. I'm leaving myself very vulnerable for potential harm, which is stupid. Look, we were born with a rainbow, a complement of emotional tools that God gave us for the specific purpose of being able to navigate our world appropriately. Okay? If we deny any of those aspects within ourselves, we fragment. We start to disconnect from the God-centered nature of who we were intended to be. As soon as we fragment and disconnect from that, we allow things into our world that we don't want there. See, in going through the Ezekiel method, we want people to start to own all the different fragmented aspects of themselves. But here's the thing that people need to understand and be aware of, is that if we're going to talk about prejudice, if someone says, for example, I don't have prejudice within me, I don't have bigotry, I don't have hate, they've fragmented, because I promise you they do.
They're lying to themselves.
They're lying to themselves, and they're lying to other people. Now, they may be trying to put on a good public, persona, or a good face for the crowd. Public face. But when they are alone and they're in the privacy of their own thoughts, or they talk to their spouse, or they talk to their best friend, I guarantee you it's a very different level of conversation. So it doesn't give people, our course does not give people carte blanche to do bad things or to act inappropriately, but what it does do is it makes people very accountable and very honest with themselves. And if they find that they have these less than positive vibrational states, why is it? We'd like to try to get to the bottom of that, so then we can find ultimately the love and gratitude, so then they can then transcend beyond that and enrich their lives to a whole new level. See, once you own and you integrate the different fragmented aspects of yourself, you can take your life to a whole different level. And then you can start to manifest the things in the world that you do want, because now you're operating at a higher vibrational state.
And also, I'm sure you find that when you find things that you don't like and you're admitting to it, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to act upon it.
Correct.
So
that's why I say it doesn't give people permission to do bad things or inappropriate things just because they don't like something.
Like, for example, with the blue cheese. If you don't like blue cheese, that doesn't mean that blue cheese has to be outlawed and you're not allowed to manufacture or sell it in any store.
It's just not for me.
Yeah, it means that when you're passing the blue cheese section of the grocery store, you just keep walking by. And perhaps, let's say you have a significant other or children that like blue cheese. That doesn't mean that you can't even buy it for them as well. It just means that you don't have to eat it yourself. You don't have to taste it.
Right.
And so you find things that you don't like. As I find as I'm myself getting older, I find things that I don't like. I can give you reasons for things. Sometimes I can't give you a reason. The chemistry, I just feel I don't like something. And it doesn't mean I have to act upon it. I just keep moving forward in a different direction, away from that negative energy for something that I don't like.
Now, what's interesting is if you can't necessarily identify why you feel the way you feel about something, it could be something that was programmed in your past. So it might be worthwhile to go through it. See, when you're able to clear those energetic blockages, then you're able to free up your life to a whole new level. See, when you go through the process and you're able to identify, okay, what are my emotional weeds? What's my story in my life? What are the things that? And I'm not talking about the positive story, like we're literally right in eyesight view of Six Flags from this window. But I'm not talking about you go to Six Flags and you're having an amazing time. Okay, that's not something you have to clear. Okay, it's maybe you went to Six Flags and the people there were really rude to you and you got really angry, upset, or someone dumped a soda on you, or you threw up on a ride, or the negative kind of feeling.
It's ingrained in you.
It's
subconscious.
Subconscious, or even consciously. Look, anything that you have an emotion over a sustained period of time allows the manifestation of a physical reality that you're either happy with or you're not. Okay, so anytime you have a story, and typically it's going to be a negative story, you're going to have an emotion around it. Okay, if you didn't have an emotion, the story would die.
This is true.
Right. So it's our sustained emotional states that perpetuate the cycle to where then we tell our friends, we tell our family, we tell social media, we're telling anybody who's willing and able to listen to us, and we tell the same stories for years on end, right? We all do it.
Yeah, I guess it's that strong emotion that gives a story its legitimacy.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I said I moved the computer monitor, an hour later.
So what?
I moved the computer monitor and it fell on my toe and I broke my toe and I went to the hospital and they didn't accept my insurance and I had my toe amputated.
Now you have a story that you can tell for years on end. And you've got a drama, you've got a trauma, right? And you can hang your hat on it. You can hang your identity around it. How many people create identities around their dramas and traumas?
And some people, that is their identity.
That is exactly that is their identity.
And if they didn't have that, they would have no existence. Or
Yes,
little existence.
Well, that may be true to an extent until they replace it with something positive.
Okay.
Right? See, that's where a lot of people get stuck, is they say, "Oh, you take my dramas and traumas away, then I have no identity." So what you need to do is you need to be able to replace that with something positive that they can now go forward with.
But would you say that's a change that people have to make on their own? Because a lot of times I find people, they live in drama.
Absolutely.
And they live in it and they live for it.
And they create it.
Yeah, and if it's not there, they create it.
A lot of people manufacture it.
Gives them a reason to get up in the morning.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do they change from these negative dramas to a positive way of life?
That's a great question. So they have the negative dramas, and then they need to identify, okay, well, what am I feeling around that? Why is it there? What happened? What's really going on? When they identify the feeling for their story or their mental weed, then they can start to find the gratitude for it. See, the gratitude is going to start to break the cycle. See, now we're back to when we talked about, how does gratitude impacted your life? See, when you can find the gratitude for something, you start to break the negative cycle because you see how the emotion, not the story yet. We're not at the story yet. We see how the emotion has brought things into your world, has created positive things, and maybe has motivated you to do things that you wouldn't ordinarily do on your own. See, emotions, especially the lower vibrational emotions, are hugely powerful in driving us to do things that we wouldn't ordinarily choose to do on our own. Okay. So if someone is depressed, our culture says take a pill. See somebody, talk it out, talk it over and over and over again. Okay. Inherently, there's nothing wrong with it. But are you really getting to the crux of the problem? Maybe, maybe not. What people tend to do is they feed that story. Anything you feed, you water your garden, it's going to grow. You water the weeds, it's going to grow. Okay, so it helps to perpetuate the cycle in order to, the more players you get involved, the more chefs you get in the kitchen talking about your problem, the more of you're feeding the beast.
All right. And sometimes that's the only attention people get is because of the negative emotional stories. And that's what they're used to. And that's everyone. I think everybody needs attention in their life. They need interaction with other people. And I guess sometimes when people have negative stories, that might be the only attention they might have gotten as a child from their parents. And they're so used to that, they carry it on into their adult life.
So if that's the emotion that they're not feeling loved or they're not getting the attention, then, sometimes some attention is better than no attention at all, right? Okay, so you can use that as a form of gratitude. Right, but it's still attention. Look, I know of people who are in the marketing and advertising. It's like, I don't care what they say as long as they're saying, right? As long as they talk about me, it's all good. As long as I'm out there, if they say nothing, that's bad. But so a lot of people live their lives like that, unfortunately, to their own detriment. So if you can at least start to break the cycle and start to have gratitude for the emotion of where that led you into the story of your life, you can start to break that pattern and say, okay, wow, without me feeling depressed, it wouldn't have let me, it wouldn't led me to research a new career or get into shape or eat better or find love or whatever it might be. And then if I didn't do these things, then I wouldn't have this career and I wouldn't be in the best shape of my life and I wouldn't have a family and I wouldn't be living in this house and in this neighborhood of my choice and maybe my finances and whatever it might be. But all that might not have been possible had it not been for the initiating event.
And sometimes I guess the initiating events are important. But it's, I guess, if you feel negative about something, and it's for a short period of time and for a very good reason, that's normal.
That can be healthy.
Yes, very healthy.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's a deterrence. Something is wrong. You feel this way. Something is wrong. And your self-preservation is saying, I feel this. We need to make a change. But I guess you run into a problem, excuse me, is when it stays too long.
That's when it becomes unhealthy.
Yeah, it's like they say, fish and relatives stink after 3 days.
But, any emotion sustained for too long is unhealthy, except for love. That's the only exception. But even happiness can be unhealthy if it's sustained for too long, because then where's your motivation to do?
Mm-hmm. You're at a peak of something, that I guess endorphins are there,
Yeah.
and you want to stay in that level, but you got to go back and to how you got to that level and maintain that level. But just by staying there, it's not going to happen.
Correct. Yeah, so then after we find the gratitude for the emotion, then we move into stacking that gratitude, which you'll learn in the technique, to where you actually wind up loving the initiating event. And I don't care what the initiating event is. It could have been a tragedy that happened in someone's life. It could have been, we've helped people overcome rape. We've helped people overcome all kinds of horrific and horrible events to where, they once thought, there's no way I'm getting past this. This has damaged me. I'm not getting over it. But we're able to help them overcome it, but not get over it, but transcend it. See, there's a difference. We never want anybody getting over anything. We want people to be able to transcend their issues. That's
work around it.
No, I need no work around it, but to incorporate, to have that integrated into to reclaim the lost and fragmented aspects of themselves, to bring the lost sheep home, if you will.
I understand. In other words, the event is still there.
Yes.
It's how you're dealing with it and how you're moving forward away from that event.
Right.
It will always be there. And you're just learning to deal with it and learning strategies how to move forward until you build up enough momentum to keep moving forward.
Right. See, it's ultimately about perceptions, isn't it? See, your greatest fantasy
I'm learning.
Your greatest fantasy is somebody else's worst nightmare, and vice versa. You look online, there's all kinds of fetishes about somebody else, what might be our worst nightmare, somebody else is daydreaming about and fantasizing about.
Okay.
Right?
So now you said you wanted to delve back into my childhood. Listen, I've been there once. I don't want to go back. It's crazy enough.
We're going to transport you, we're going to shrink you, we're going to make you little, you're going to be running around the table. So what brought you to Texas?
Actually, I was getting divorced at the time, and I wanted to get out of the quote-unquote New York rat race. I was tired of it. I grew up there.
How old were you?
I'm sorry?
How old were you at the time?
I'm not going to tell you, because then you can figure out how old I am now.
Okay. Well, were you in 20s, 30s,
and 40s?
40s. Okay. So you're
40s.
Okay. Did you have a family?
Yeah.
Okay. Kids?
Yeah. So I wanted to get out of New York, and I wanted to get out of New York regardless. I was just tired of New York. I needed a change of pace. Okay. Expensive to live there. I mean, I'd see the same things every day. I just need something a little bit different, something to perk me up. Mm-hmm. And I had a client down in Texas, and I said, here I am. I'm a CPA. If I can't find a job in Dallas, Texas, I can't find a job anywhere.
Okay.
So I said, I'll take a chance. So I came down, and I found a job, right away. And it was a breath of fresh air, basically, coming down. And regardless if I was getting divorced or not, I would have made the move either by myself or bring my family either to Dallas or a different state with somewhat of a large city. Mm-hmm. And I like it down here a lot. It's different. I go back to New York to visit. Mm-hmm.
How often do you go back?
Oh, twice a year, once a year, three times, somewhere in that range. And I'm going to be back in November. Hey, I'm going to give a plug to my son Michael. Congratulations. My son Michael's getting married in November. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to going up there for
Well, mazel tov. Fabulous.
Thank you. So what was your original question that I went off on a tangent?
Well, what brought you to Texas? What brought you to Dallas? So you got divorced.
Yeah, so I was here once or twice. I had a client, and I liked it in this area, and I said, let me give it a shot. And I picked myself up, and I came down, and I like it. And it worked out for me.
Terrific.
But see, I'm a survivor. You can say. If I went to Dallas, I went to St. Louis. If I went to Oakland, California, went to San Diego, if I went to Newport, Rhode Island, I would find a way to make it.
Okay.
I'd find some way to find work, find a place to live, and survive. That's what I would do. But I happen to have liked Dallas, and it worked out for me. And that's basically what brought me to Dallas. There's no great big secret, no big formula. It was pretty simple.
Fabulous. So what do you find the psychology is behind your average? Okay, we talked about this in the first half, where there are 3 factors on fraud and what makes people decide to go that. But what do you find is their mental process that's deeper than what we talked about?
I think that a lot of people have this vision of where they believe they should be, this vision of their success, the vision of their personal ambitions. And we're taught to believe certain things by television, by advertisement, by radio, that our lifestyle should be a certain way. And if we fall short of that, we're a bunch of failures. You see a beautiful car on television, they're advertising for it, or you see, in a dealer's showroom or an advertisement in a newspaper, and you go, wow, I should have this. And you don't. And you go, my life isn't as good as it should be. Meanwhile, you have a very good car. It may not be the latest model. It might need a repair or two, but you have four wheels, you have transportation. Better than a horse and wagon back in the 1800s. Better than traveling on foot, So people get this mindset that they're a failure. They should have more than what they have. They should have a better lifestyle than what they have. Instead of being grateful for what they have, they think they should be having more.
Okay, so then if they have this failure mentality, then it after a while it moves them into a direction that they probably find themselves now being stuck in. They start committing themselves into a direction.
Yeah, and usually it's the beginning of that slippery slope. Okay? For example, I worked on a case, and person worked in a company, huge medical bills. Wife was ill, very ill.
How much were the medical bills?
A few $100,000.
A few $100,000, wow.
200,000 medical bills.
Okay.
But that's not the end of the world. You can always make deals. You can declare personal bankruptcy. There's many things you can do, and I believe that
there are options.
Yeah, when you do something, you have to do it. What's the right word I'm looking for? Step up to the plate and be a man about what you do.
Sure.
Don't hide in the corners. Don't steal. Don't take something that belongs to somebody else. Step up to the plate. If you have an issue, admit to it and deal with it as such.
Right.
Okay?
Own up to it.
Oh, exactly. Own up to it. Okay? So, a lot of medical bills, you can make a deal with the insurance companies. You can make a deal with the hospitals, the doctors. You can declare personal bankruptcy. And there's nothing wrong with having to declare personal bankruptcy. It's a hit on your credit, this and that, but guess what?
It goes away after a while.
You survive. It goes away.
Yeah.
I have a client that left Texas, could not afford the house that she was in. She moved out to California. And she left. Her credit was bad.
Wait. Let's back the train up a little bit.
Okay.
She was in Texas, couldn't afford her house, and moved to California?
Wait. Yes. And actually,
can we talk about judgment here for a minute?
You're absolutely right about that. Also, she lived in a house with her ex-husband. She was divorced. Her new job was taking her out to California. She was done with Texas. Bank foreclosed on a house. Huge hit. She was reversing her mortgage. Huge hit on her credit. Last year, she ended up buying a new house. Not a new house, a house out in California where she lived. Job is great. Kids are thriving. It was all reversed. It all came back. She was in a horrible mental state at the time, emotional state, and she just was able to work herself out of it. So anyway, and she didn't steal anything. She didn't do anything wrong. She worked hard at getting out of where she was, and she was very successful right now. It's something. Not everybody can be as successful. Not everybody can be successful, but there are ways out of it. And like I said, own up to it. So, man had huge medical bills, and what he did is he started stealing from the company, and he started doing business deals in the name of the company, under his own name, and taking the company's money. In other words, he'd go out and he'd do sales.
He was embezzling, in a sense.
Yeah. He'd go out and do sales, and people thought they were doing sales in the name of the company, but they were really doing sales with him in his own private company, and he got caught.
Wow.
And he had some lawsuits against him, and he ended up in a bad place. But he stole because he was doing the sales in the name of the company, but keeping the money on his own. Okay, he's not actually writing a check, and he's not actually taking money out of the till. But what he did was wrong, and it was against the rules of the company. It was against the law as well. So, basically, it was a case that he just started going down that slippery slope. He wouldn't man up to it, and he felt he had a better way to get out of it. I bet you if he went up to his company, went up to the one of the bosses, one of the owners of the company, he could have worked out some sort of a financial arrangement based on future salary, future sales, to help pay for some of those bills. He could have negotiated with the insurance companies, medical providers. He could have gotten his way out, but he took. He just went there and he went down that slippery slope. His mind said, I cannot do this. It cannot work. And he had to find some secret way to get out of it. And he just went down that slope and he crashed.
See, you bring up a very interesting point, because that also brings into how people fragment from themselves, is that he couldn't admit to himself or to other people. He couldn't embrace that aspect of himself, and that got him into further hot water. You know
what they say, pride goes before the fall.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's a big part of what we teach is look, you got to own up to your stuff. But it's more than just owning up to it. You, in the end, you need to really love all the aspects of who and what you are. That's the way that you are able to transcend beyond those issues.
Just when life is not easy, and there's no rules for success. You're going to go up and down, the ups and downs of life as you live it. Okay, and sometimes when you're on the downslope of life, you may not feel successful. You may not feel worthwhile. You have negative feelings about yourself. But just as a pendulum on a clock swings one way,
we all go through cycles.
It goes back the other way.
Absolutely.
And it's just a matter of hanging in there and doing it, and hanging in there, giving yourself fortitude to get past those bad times, because the good times will come back again as well.
Speaking of hanging in there, I can't believe how much time has already passed. We've got about another 15 minutes or so left on the clock before our show ends for today. But I would like to invite callers to call in or to chime in on Facebook. The phone number here is 214-431-5062. That's 214-431-5062. If you have questions for either myself or my guest, please call or type something in on Facebook, and we would love to hear from you.
I was just checking Facebook. I'm not a big cell phone, always have to be at my cell phone, but I was just kind of curious what was going on Facebook, so that's why I was on my phone just now.
No worries, no worries. Yes. So as soon as we get a question, if we get a question, we'll go ahead and field that over to either one of us.
Okay. I have a question for you in the meantime.
Please.
So you have the Ezekiel Center, okay? And I come to Ezekiel Center, and I go, I have problems, I have issues, I don't know what to do with my life. I'm a perfect candidate for what the Ezekiel Center can do for me. What would be the first step the Ezekiel Center would do in terms of me and my issues?
Well, we have a number of routes that you could go. Either one, we have classes that we can offer that we do on a weekly basis. We do it every Tuesday in Plano, and you can participate in those, and we take you through the entire method step by step. So we actually teach you. See, we want to teach people how to empower themselves so they can use the tools to then benefit their life. Now, we also like to keep people around the campfire, because the more you hone your skills, the better you get, the more we want you to be able to master the technique, so that way you can take it and you can run with it and you can learn how to do it on your own, and you can possibly help others. Another option that we have is I do private one-on-one sessions with folks, and that is super powerful. So if you're not comfortable in addressing your issues in an open setting, we work together on a one-to-one basis where I take you through the technique and I take you on a journey of self-discovery. See, here's the key thing. If I tell you what your problem is, it's meaningless. If I have you discover what your problem is, mind blown, you have revelations, you have breakthroughs, you have, as soon as you can take ownership of what it is, then you can take your life to where you want it to go.
I agree. You have some skin in the game, as I call it.
You have to have skin in the game
when you discover it on your own.
Absolutely. Well, not only do you have skin in the game, but for example, last night we have two different types of classes. People can go to the website ezekielcenter.org, EZEKIEL Center CENTER.org. There you'll find our schedule of classes, both live and online, where we do it live online, but as opposed to live and in person. Both classes are amazing. I don't care if a person has repeated the same classes over and over again. They're never the same classes. They're always different. There's always different nuances. There's always different concepts that are brought in, and different levels of group participation, and the dynamics of the group are so synergistic that if typically someone has an issue, chances are there's several people within that group that are having the same kind of an issue. But kind of back to your question, when you do the private one-on-one session, we have you have those breakthroughs, we have you have those epiphanies, so then when you own it, that's a whole different ball of wax. Rather than me telling you something. If I say, man, Robert, that's an amazing shirt. I love the colors in that. I absolutely love your shirt. You go, yeah, thank you. But if you own that, if you go, I really love my shirt. This shirt is really cool. It looks good on me. That's very different than just accepting a compliment from somebody.
No, I totally get it. It's the same thing with dealing with children.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can give your child something, but if they have to go out and earn it, they appreciate it that much more.
Right, right.
Very similar type of concept.
Absolutely, and you have to earn your wins, because here's the problem with today's society a lot of times is that things are just given out without people really earning it. They think, a lot of people kind of are brought up with the mindset these days, it seems like, from what I'm observing, that since they exist, they should have.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the way life works. Entitlement. Yeah, it's not the way life works, and in the end, it doesn't serve them in the long run, because then their victories are hollow.
Yes. They didn't earn them.
They didn't earn it.
It doesn't mean anything.
Right. If I say to you, you know what, Robert, I see you've got a busy schedule. Don't worry about going to the gym. I'll work out for you, and you'll feel better after I've worked out.
Exactly.
Or, how many times have you heard growing up, you better eat everything on your plate because there's starving children in the world, and you need to eat. Well, how is me eating everything on my plate going to make them feel better?
Can't relate to that.
There's no connection. There's no correlation. It has to be personal. It has to be earned.
And also, I think when you have a success, you have this great breakthrough, and you work through it, and you're able to achieve something, you put that positive emotion to it.
Absolutely,
and
100%.
it sticks with you even more.
Yeah, and that's the thing that we want people to walk away with, is that lasting, permanent change that people can take with them, and they own that.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this. If the Ezekiel Center exists, if you were to say, these are the type of people that I'm looking for to help, what would that category be? How would you define the people that you're looking to help?
We're looking to help anybody and everybody who would like to take their lives to the next level. Now, here's the challenge that I have with that question. If I say I want to help everybody, all the marketers out there, they cringe. They go, oh, no, you can't say that. You have to have a niche. You have to narrow it down. But how many people have issues and problems that they have trouble getting over with? How many people out there have repeating patterns in their life that they just can't escape from? How many people keep inviting the same kinds of people back in their life that keep showing up in different bodies but recreate the same scenario? How many people, it's part of the human
pattern.
Right. How many people have poor financial health, poor physical health, poor spiritual health, poor emotional health, poor health with relationships, and the cycles keep repeating. Now, so when people ask me, what am I looking for in terms of being able to help people, I'm looking for people who want to break these cycles and want to take their lives to the next level. So they can be anybody. It can be a CEO of a major corporation. It can be a housewife. It can be a person returning from a tour of duty. It can be just the regular person going through life's normal trials and tribulations. There's not a specific set individual. I would say that my niche market is someone who recognizes that their life could be better and they are willing to do something about it.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. So I know you said this before. How can people get in touch with you at the Ezekiel Center?
The best way, and I love that you're flipping the interview on me. Thank you. It's EzekielCenter.org. EZEKIEL Center.org. Also, you can check us out on Facebook at Ezekiel's Teachings, and we also have our Facebook page for the Ezekiel Center, and you can just on Facebook the Ezekiel Center.
Mm-hmm. So can I ask you one other question, if you don't mind?
Please.
Somebody comes in and they need help. Mm-hmm. How long is the process? Does it ever end? Is there a finality to it? How does that normally work? Someone comes in, they want help, and you can help guide them to where they need to go. How long of a process does that normally take?
Well, number one, it depends on the individual, because some people, they can rocket through the process and they do it pretty quick. Other people are too busy fighting for their limitations. So that might take longer. See, they're a little bit more emotionally invested. They're stubborn. They go, well, you don't understand what they did to me. You don't understand what they said. You don't understand how they treated me. If you only knew what happened to me, you wouldn't be saying that I could get over this or transition beyond it. You would be sympathizing with me. You would take my side. And no. It's not about that. It's about altering our perceptions and being able to see what the lesson is. Why is the lesson there? What's it there to teach you? Because ultimately, we don't have anything that occurs in our lives without some kind of divine purpose behind it to take us to the next level. Now, whether you believe in past lives, reincarnations, whatever that's in material, but however long it takes you to learn a lesson is how long it's going to take you to learn a lesson. So whether it's, your entire life or beyond, it's up to you. I would suggest that we've all had the experience, and this is kind of where we want to kind of shortcut things a bit. We've had the experience where something negative has happened to us, and then we look back on it 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years later, and we think, oh my God, that was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. Because if it wasn't for that one bad thing, then all these other things wouldn't have happened in my life, and that wouldn't have led me here, and this is the most amazing place, and I wouldn't change it for the world. Thank you, God, because I see the wisdom behind your lesson. That's ultimately the revelation we want to take people to in a short span.
That makes sense. That makes sense. In other words, they have a negative experience, and that's what motivates them to change themselves.
Right.
And you want to do that same thing. You want to change themselves based on certain experiences that they've had.
Right. But we want to take them through it, but we want to walk them through it. We want to guide them through it through our proprietary method called the Ezekiel method, where we take them step by step. Now, here's the thing. In Ezekiel's book in the Old Testament, there are 3 basic sections. Most people don't know this because most people haven't read through it. It's a lot of fire and brimstone. It's a tough read. My book that'll be coming out hopefully in the next month or so, you can check out. We're going to be doing pre-orders here pretty soon. But it's the title of the book is Teachings from a Prophet. So the way my book is laid out is similar to how Ezekiel's book's laid out in terms of there's 3 primary sections. There's sin. And I'm not talking about necessarily the churchy, browbeating over the head kind of biblical sense of the word. What we classify sin is, in this coursework, is anything that you have said, done, thought, or have acted out on to other people that you knew if you were in front of a higher power you wouldn't do, but you do it anyway. That's a sin. Okay. Now, I include thought in that because thought eventually become things. Okay.
What you think you act upon.
You act upon, and then you help manifest, right? The second part of the book of Ezekiel is repentance, redemption, and atonement. Okay, so that leads into loving the unlovable and also leads into gratitude. It's part of the repentance, redemption, and atonement. The third part of that is hope, where Ezekiel lays out in the Old Testament, where he prophesies the building of the third temple. There's the dried bones prophecy with the resurrection of the nation of Israel. There's the coming of the Messiah. There's all these amazing things that are happening in the third part of his book. Well, in the third part of our of Teachings from a Prophet, we teach about hope, but in being able to, once you've learned your lesson, and we help you clear it, you've now got a clean slate.
Where do you go from there?
Where do you go from there? What do you fill your closet with? Once you've emptied your closet, what are you going to put in there? And if you don't put something in with intentionality, what's going to happen? It's going to get filled with junk. So we want you to be intentional, and we help guide you through the process on what are you going to be able to manifest in your world that is actually congruent with your values and it's obtainable for you.
That's fantastic. That makes a lot of sense. By the way, as a side note, the book that you're writing is Teachings from a Prophet.
Teachings from a Prophet.
I'm beginning to write a book. It's in my business. It's Teachings for a Prophet.
That would make sense, and that would be completely appropriate. But prophet, of course, is spelled differently in my book and yours. Yes.
So it's a process you bring people through.
Absolutely, it's a process.
You make them see you make them realize and understand and see where they are and what they've been doing while they're in the state that they're in. Then once you can clear that and you get their mind thinking forward, you fill, like you said, you fill their closet with positive things. You fill their mind, their life with positive things, something to lean on, something to use, something to motivate them to move forward with.
Well, plus I want to see that their mind is starting to be filled with positive stuff from the very get-go. That's why we take them through gratitude and love. Because we want people to be able to recognize that whatever trials, tribulations, or issues that they've run through in the past, there was a reason behind it, and it was ultimately to serve them for their better good, even though they weren't able to recognize it at the time.
Well, some of these things I'm sure were negative that happened to them.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
Do you teach them what those triggers might be so they don't fall back into the same old routines?
Well, no, and I'll tell you why. Once you clear it, seldom does a pattern have to repeat, because once you learn the lesson, why would you put your hand back on the hot stove?
Well, maybe you like the smell of bacon.
Well, if that's the case, then we've got bigger issues than just that to deal with, right? Then we need to find out, why do you like the smell of burning flesh and searing pain?
This is true. This is true. Makes a lot of sense. Definitely makes a lot of sense. Do you have any questions coming in?
No questions. I think we're meeting everybody's needs and expectations. It's all kind of quiet, so I'm glad we're filling a service, and I'm so blessed and grateful to have you here. You've been a fantastic guest. Wow, we'll talk about some interesting concepts and topics that I never would have thought of necessarily on my own, unless maybe I watched CSI TV or something. But
well, it's been a pleasure here to sit and chat with you and learn more about yourself and the Ezekiel Center and what it can do. And I have a certain, after living for so many years, you start to learn lessons of life, and you read about it. Where did I go wrong? What do I do to correct it? And a lot of things that it seems like the Ezekiel Center is trying to teach. It's not that I'm an expert or I know it, but it's in line with my thought process of where you've been through, where you want to go, and how do you connect the two together, and where do you get there? What road do you take? What process do you need to get there?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Our time has come, and I'm blessed and grateful to have everybody out there listening. Please continue to listen, and we will look forward to visiting with you again soon. Blessings and greetings to everybody.